And good afternoon. What a great panel. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedule today to talk to us about real estate. Debbie and I appreciate your time, and we'll just jump right into it. I'd like to start with if each of you would just go around and tell us who you are, how long you've been in real estate, what you specialize in. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Who wants to start? Pick a person.
All right, Tom, you first.
Oh, geez.
Since you have that awesome headset.
Yeah.
Tom Blanchard. I'm the current president of LVR and broker of Renters Warehouse. And I originally got licensed in 1981, but have been licensed in Clark County since 1994. So been around just a little bit, and glad to be here. And thanks all that are watching. Hopefully it'll be educational.
Thank you for your leadership during this time. Who could have imagined, right?
Yeah, who could? Nobody could have imagined.
You'll look back and laugh, Tom. You will.
Yeah,
Sure. Probably.
Who's next, Keith?
My name's Keith Thompson.
I know you're shy. I got to pull it out of you.
Yeah, you do. I'm the broker of Large Vision Property Management, part of Debbie's office here. And I've been doing this since 2004, so I'm the baby in this whole mess.
Okay. How about you, Chris?
Okay, Chris McGarry from Berkshire Hathaway. I got licensed in Nevada in 1992, joined the Americana family in 94, and for the last 20 out of the last 26 years, I've been with Berkshire Hathaway now. And doing property management is my specialty, both commercial and residential.
Nice. Thank you, Chris. And Bernie.
Bernie Chipolati. I got licensed in 1977 at my own company called Terra West Real Estate and Development, CCIM, and the CPM. And I joined Keller Williams about 4 years ago. It's a great move.
Thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. We're like, how can we get a commercial department going? We need somebody that really knows what they're doing. Who would that be? And you definitely have a wealth of knowledge and information. So
thank you. I've been around a couple of days.
Just a couple, and just developed just a few projects and developments in your time, Bernie. So it's good. I love the minds that are on here. And so we kind of wanted to do something a little different today and talk more about the investment property issues that are out there, because we're just, with COVID and everything that's going on, we're seeing some things. Tom, I'm going to ask you first, because you're on a committee for the state, and there was some recent kind of discussions. Will you share what you're hearing and seeing as far as evictions and what that process may look like? We can't hear you, Tom.
There we go. I have my own mute button just in case.
There we go.
I try to censor myself as much as possible. Let me just start with the fact that I know it appears that no one's doing anything about what's been going on, that there's been no movement on the evictions. There's been no movement on open houses. There's been no movement from the governor's office. I can assure you that we spend a lot of hours trying to massage the governor and his staff to let some things go. Let open houses be open. Let's get the eviction process started, at least phased in. And there's been some movement as far as us providing the information of how to phase different sections of the eviction processes in, i.e., and this is not guaranteed. This has been conversations. So I don't want anybody to get the idea that this is happening tomorrow. Nothing's going to really happen until June 30th now, with the extension of everything going on that the governor announced yesterday. But when they do start moving and they do start opening up the eviction process, it'll be phased in, and it's going to be phased in a real logical manner. And those people that are breaking the lease, that are, have additional occupants, have a dog, something that's breaking the lease that has nothing to do with payment, will be the first things to go. Those properties that have been sold and you have a holdover tenant that's just there because he can be, will hopefully be something that we'll be able to have the eviction process take hold and get that movement of the transfer of that property from the seller to the new buyer. This has been a real difficult thing to try to maneuver through, because there are just so many people that have their hands in this pie. We've been trying to work with legal aid, working with the justice court system, working with the AG's office, the governor's office. So there's a lot of people that are involved in it, and they all have their ideas of how this should all go. So we are working on getting the movement going. It's just having them open the gate first, and it was something that is acceptable to all parties down there. It's been a less than ideal process. It's been a frustrating process. That's for damn sure. Let me just put that. If you're frustrated, imagine if you also had to talk to the people that are in charge and say, here, no, just because. It's, like when you were a kid, your parents said no, and you say, why? Because I said so. And that's how it feels. It's frustrating to us. It's frustrating to you, and it's frustrating to everybody. But just know that we are working on it. And until they make the decision, we're sort of stuck with what we have.
I had heard that the evictions were going to be pushed out to July 24th, that was the earliest that anything would even start. Is that true?
Well, the July 24th date coincides with the CARES Act. And one of the concerns was that if we start having evictions coming in, how, as practitioners, are we going to be able to know whether or not a mortgage is backed by Freddie or Fannie or by one of the GSEs that's covered by the CARES Act? Yeah, we have a form, but that form is only as good as the information that's put on it by the homeowner, which may or may not have done the right thing and actually checked or even understand or know whether or not their loan was backed by a GSE. So it was, it's a give and take. We have a form for it. Hopefully, as soon as, if they decide before that, we'll be able to go forward with it. But yeah, I mean, conservative thinking is that the July 24th thing, maybe when we open up the floodgates for those that haven't paid, they want to make sure that those that do a repayment plan are covered and taken care of. But those that just, and look, it's the flagrant people that are taking advantage of the system that we want to get rid of. And I think everybody agrees, whether it's the governor's office, the AG's office, or even legal aid, they have to agree the fact that there are people taking advantage of the system. And, but they're willing to allow those folks to take advantage of the system to protect the majority of people that actually do have an issue about making their payments.
And one last question for you. When you say stages, so if the first is people who have broken leases, how many stages about would there be before you get to the people who haven't paid at the end?
That's another $1 million question that I don't really have a good answer for. But I can tell you this, the last people that you'll be able to evict are those that legitimately can't pay. So we're stuck with that for a while.
And I take it there will be some criteria like unemployment. I mean, they don't have any employment or anything, right? To determine who those people are.
That's been one of the big conversations, right? How do we qualify who
Sure.
can't pay and who can pay, and how much can we delve into them, their situation? The argument's been that we should be able to delve into it completely because they had to qualify to rent the place. They should be able to qualify for having a repayment plan. How do we know that they're going to be able to still continue making the rent payment that they agreed to originally, and add on a portion of that on a repayment plan? If they're not going to be able to qualify for it and be able to make that payment, why are we even going through this process? There are people on the other side of the fence that say it doesn't matter. We want people to stay in their homes, that they're there, and we need to protect them. And I get it. I do. We don't need a larger homeless problem than we have. And we also don't want to have musical chairs, right? So someone leaves my property because they can't pay, and they move over to Chris's property, and maybe they can pay or maybe they can't pay. And all we're doing is moving bad actors around to somebody, and it's somebody else's problem. So when you look at it and unfold it and unpack it, it becomes really, really convoluted.
Yeah.
And, there's what if every single second. So it's hard to say.
How about Keith and Chris? What are your investors saying? What are you seeing on your side of things?
Is there any provisions or any thought process as to how these owners are going to get money because they need to pay their bills? And even if they don't have mortgages, they still have bills. I mean, a lot of them, especially on the commercial side. Commercial side has a lot bigger bills.
So the good news, you want me to answer that question?
Yes.
Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
No, Chris, go ahead.
So the good news is, at least for our portfolio, we manage about 2 million square feet of properties on the commercial side, which is about 42 different buildings. The good news is that less than 10% of the tenants that are in these places are not paying rent. So we're talking about a very small number of commercial tenants, probably, I would say, estimate around 45 to 50 of them. On the residential side, same thing. We just checked these numbers yesterday. We have 500 single family homes that we manage, and about 50 are having problems making payments. Most of these people, whether it was permissible or not, have just elected not to pay. And they know that they cannot pay. Like Tom said, there's going to be some that could take advantage of it. And then there are some that have actually sent us, even though we don't ask, they've sent us proof. Hey, we've been laid off. We didn't get approved for the loan. We didn't get, we haven't gotten assistance. So on a lot of those, we're just standing still. Our residential people have reached out to their mortgage companies, and a lot of them got an automatic 3-month deferral of the mortgage. So they're sitting okay. They don't get rent, but they also don't have to make the mortgage payment. On the commercial side, it's a whole different story. We've got landlords that are making huge leaps in trying to get funding to make their payments. They've exhausted their other reserve funds that we've set aside for building improvements and different things just to make the mortgage payments, because the rents aren't coming in on those. But again, it's a small number. We're all just waiting for the end of this phase, and then it's going to be like 2009. We're going to extend and pretend, extend the lease, put the incentive for extending your lease, if you've got only a few years left, is that we're going to waive the last 90 days of rent that you didn't pay, and now you're in a new lease for another 5 years. That helps the landlord preserve value of the commercial building, and it helps the tenant because they just wash the rent out.
And we're going to see a lot of differences. Keith, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, not right now. That's okay.
I want to ask Lee, because I saw you hopped on the call, and I think you're in commission hearing, so you may have to hop back off the call, I have a feeling. And so while we have your valuable brain, I would love to hear from you, kind of your thoughts on investment property issues that we're facing now, and where you see that going.
Like everybody here, we face we face different circumstances for years,
You're not very loudly. I don't know if we can make yourself any louder.
Sure, hold on for a second.
Those fancy headsets.
Yeah,
I know.
Exactly.
he's got a sexy headset.
Is that better?
Much
Yes.
better.
Okay. So, everybody on this call has been practicing real estate forever. And so we went through 2001, we went through 2007, 2008, and we've been through these issues before, but never have I seen where private property rights of the owner has kind of been confused a little bit. And so I know that we're in a really awkward position. I know the association's doing everything they can to get the message out, and I appreciate, Debbie, that you're here doing this, because I think investors are going to look back at real estate brokers and real estate agents doing their property management and say, were you there for me? Were you fighting for me? And I think the association is coming out with some information like a white paper to help practitioners actually be able to speak to the real issues that are going on. And so I think investors, some people are going to be really hurt and others are not going to be hurt. I'm in the same situation as Chris. We have very few people that have gone through this scenario. We got people that are paying as agreed, but I think that when we come out of this, that first month, 2 or 3 months, the courts are going to be just deluged with people going after people, and I think there's going to be some long drawn out lawsuits in reference to this, of what the directive was allowed to do and not allowed to do. I think it's just very sad. We're in a very weird part of our history, but I think that the association, after talking to Tom and the state president, has really reached out and done the best they could under the circumstances, which are difficult because it's hard to go to a governor that's locked down a state and say, hey, wait a second, we've got 18,000 members, would like you to open things back up. And he goes, yeah, but I've got 3 million people I have to worry about. So I think that owners need the message that we have gone to fight for them and that we have tried to protect private property rights, because that's what all this is about, is having the right to own real estate and to be able to have the quiet enjoyment for the tenant, and more importantly, the opportunity for owners to look at this and say, man, I thought this, I planned for a month or two. I never planned for 5 or 6 months. And I think that when we start to sell properties again to investors, they're going to have that background in the back of their mind in the future. I know I rambled a little bit there and I apologize.
No, I think that's good. I think one of an attraction, we've had a lot of California investors coming here to buy because their system is so messed up with how they have to interact with tenants and the rules and what the hoops and stuff that they have to go through. And I hope and pray that we don't end up somewhat similar here, because I think that'll really hurt our economy.
Well, I think that's where, if you're not a major investor for the association, you have to really consider that and consider how we fight in politics either with money or votes. And so if we have both, we can do a lot, because I guarantee you when we come out of this, they're going to be looking for money from a lot of different sources. And one of them is going to be us. So if you haven't given to RPAC, you might want to consider giving it to it.
Well said. What about you, Bernie? You've been around forever. I think you've been around longer than anybody else on the call. What are your thoughts of this kind of shift? And if you had to look in your crystal ball, what do you see happening in 3 months or 6 months or a year?
Well, it's already happening. The transfers for February was 395 million. For March was 319 million. For April was down 100 million, down to 219 million. So I think May will be down even further. Income producing properties are sold based on capitalization rates, which I think will inch up to take risk into consideration. Also, if there is any lawsuits between tenant and landlord, those properties won't sell. So it'll affect commercial real estate a lot if there is any lawsuits. So income producing properties, because cap rates will go up, rate per foot will come down. It is going to be difficult because sellers don't want to reduce their price. Buyers have to take risk into consideration.
Hey, Bernie, with that in mind, do you think people will look at this time and say, hey, wait a second, that was the weirdest time in the world, and take that in consideration with cap rates?
Well, that's a good question. The recession of 2008 was weirdest time in the world. Now we have a virus, weirdest time in the world. If you don't plan for risk, you're gonna get in trouble.
Right.
Cap rates are very, very low today. They're tied to interest rate. As interest rate creeps up to slow the economy, which may happen, what you do with all these properties at a low cap rate, people are gonna lose money. Cap rates are gonna inch up because of the risk. And as they inch up, people will lose money.
Yeah.
So, as far as this happening, weird, it is weird, but the next one will be even weirder.
Good way of putting it. Weirder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Bernie, say hello to your lovely wife for me, would you?
Well,
Okay.
nice seeing you, by the
See
way.
you too.
We go back to when we were kids.
That's right. His wife went to high school with me. Small world, huh? Small town.
We feel sorry for her. Patty, you're muted.
Here I am. So on the commercial side of things, with so much that's gone virtual, and you're hearing, big box retailers are closing up. What are you seeing on the retail side in the commercial real estate business? JCPenney's is closing, Nordstrom's is closing. There's a lot. I mean, you're seeing it with the smaller retail businesses.
Well, I think big boxes getting absorbed by greater businesses. No, I think small retail centers will be okay, but cap rates will inch up. Price per foot will go up or come down, I mean, because cap rates going up. I don't think they will, all of them will close down, because just like offices, if you've ever been in an office by yourself, you want people around. They may get smaller, but they're not going to go away completely. But
Nice.
the value of that investment is going to be the income stream. If the tenant has a hiccup like now, if the tenant refuses to pay, that building just lost value.
Mm-hmm.
The landlord is going to look at that very, very closely. I think it's going to be very difficult for a marginal tenant to get in business.
Yeah, because I think somebody had said earlier they were planning for a few months, right? Maybe have some reserves, but we don't know how long it's going to go on and when our business is going to start thriving again with the
Hey,
walk-in
Chris, what do you
customer.
think?
So on the commercial side, Bernie's absolutely right on the investment value side. But as far as the tenant mix, what we are seeing nationally is landlords are becoming partners with their tenants to kind of get into the retail business with their tenants, Simon Company and a couple of the big ones. Locally, if you've driven around like we all do, we drive around and we stare out the side of the car looking at real estate signs and real estate buildings, is that you're seeing drugstores that used to be there are now plasma centers. You're seeing department stores are now health insurance companies. They're it's scary because everything's going to taking care of our health rather than buying stuff, but they're mixed uses. And then across the country, there's some malls where they're creating senior centers where people actually live, and yet the retailers are still on either side of the big box, but there's a residential component to it now. So I think people are going to get creative. We are doing a proposal on a property that just came up yesterday on the west side of town. I got to be confidential about where it's at, but it's 118,000 square feet that's been empty with the big box store since 8 years ago. The last tenant moved out 8 years ago. And we're looking at all kinds of different alternatives about, what we can do with it. It's a great location. It's on the west side, but it's just completely empty. So people are getting
Chris,
creative. Yeah.
I think at this time, you guys always think of ways to be just amazing and use square footage very creatively. I know I was reading an article about a university that had some problems with their dorms, and they turned them into senior living, and people started to go to college. Older people started to go to college. You guys are real creative. I got to get back to my other meeting. Nice talking with you guys. Have a great day.
You got it.
Thanks.
See you later, Lee.
Bye-bye.
When the real estate division is going to open?
Oh, I'll ask them. Yeah, thanks for that, Debbie. Appreciate that. Remember, I'm a volunteer.
They're funded for free.
Just like Tom. We do this and we don't get PAID. Okay.
No.
See you later.
Care.
Bye, Lee.
Bye. Thank you.
Debbie.
I couldn't help it. I'm like, when is it happen?
She asked the
Well,
questions.
So let's shift a little bit and talk about mindset, and in two different ways. What are you doing to keep your mindset up? And especially with, I imagine your phones are ringing off the hooks. You're having a lot of interactions with people, probably more so than ever. What are you doing to keep everybody's mindset up, including your own?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question again this week, because last week with the gals on here, they're doing yoga, they're working out, they're running. I don't think anybody on this panel is running. So that's good. We are enjoying being at home. We are enjoying Nevada. I think I shared that last week.
Yeah.
Normally we'll go to California or Mexico or wherever, the commissions allow us to go during the summer. And this year we've gone up to Rio Light, we've gone up to Beatty, we've gone up to Ely, Nevada. We're planning a trip to Battle Mountain in July. It's kind of exciting. I've never in 30 years of living in Nevada, other than driving to Reno and driving to Idaho, I've never actually stayed in one of the the towns. So we're just getting out, just kind of, we're busy. I think I shared that yesterday or last week. We're busy. We've been busier the last 3 months than we were the first 3 months. And it's really just phone calls and daily emails, updating our owners, because most of our owners are out of state, and their states are different than ours. They don't know what phase 2 means, or what they want to know. When's the rent going to come in? They're not being jerks about it, but they are concerned about it because they've got obligations. So we're busy. There's not a lot of time for yoga and running, but I should be.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's interesting. I had the opportunity to go to a place. I lived here 20 years. I go to Utah over the last 20 years. I used to own a vacation home there and drove right by it, called Little Jamaica, off of I-15 just before the gorge. To your point, Chris, I never knew it was there. I saw somebody else on Facebook. They went, made the time, went and saw it, and it's a pretty cool spot. It's on the Virgin River, and I guess a lot of people know about it, but me, I felt it was pretty crowded. So yeah, taking the time.
Cities.
Bernie, yes.
Regard to mindset, I think that, I went through the recession of 2008. a lot of guys, a lot of agents making a lot of money before it hit. There were agents made a lot of money after it hit. You have to adjust to the time. There's a lot of people, a lot of agents that will not adjust. But if you adjust, Bruce Lee said, "Be water, my friend."
Yeah.
What he meant by that is you have to adjust. If you adjust, you can survive and make money. If you don't adjust, there's a lot of people throw their hands and say, "Oh, we're in lockdown. I can't pay my bills." That's garbage. So if you adjust, I think you survive. If you don't adjust, you'll die.
That's kind of the key to life, right?
It really is.
My grandmother's 103 years old, and she said it's a great life if you don't weaken. And I think that was her point. You have to be able to adjust to survive the Great Depression and many other things. And well said. Anyone else?
Yeah, look, I've said this before with mindset and what we're going through. When we were stuck at home, we had to, make yourself an office and actually like you're working so that you're just not stuck being on the couch and watching Netflix all day. But more than that is you have to look at real estate, whichever commercial, residential, property management, and try to find what other people aren't doing. It's hard to sell a chocolate bar in front of Ghirardelli Square, right? You got a Hershey bar in front of Ghirardelli Square, you're gonna have a hard time selling it. But if you're selling a Hershey bar somewhere in the middle of the Caribbean, where they don't have chocolate, you're going to be able to sell the heck out of it. So, do what others aren't, find where that is and just do it and continue to do it. I mean, I've been a regular real estate agent. I switched over to REO before it came over, and now I'm doing, rent estate property management stuff. And because I see where things have gone, and I've been lucky, been very, very lucky. This is not because I'm intelligent. It's just, I've been lucky to figure out that that's where I wanted to go. And
That's not true, Tom. That's not true.
Very intelligent.
You're dodging all the time. You're ducking and moving and maneuvering.
And thank you, but it's, you just have to be aware of what's happening and not just tunnel vision into one section of the market. You have to look at it all and see what may be the next wave that's coming. That's all.
You'll be light on your feet and nimble, right? Be able to adjust and be willing to reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
And
I've
comes with
reinvented
that
myself
is-
many a times now.
Yeah, I can relate. You got to be able to take that leap of faith and grow. And it's a little uncomfortable, but if you're willing to do that, I think that's really the long game.
Well, and I love what Bernie was talking about with being water, because that's how you maneuver through stuff to figure out where it is. When this thing hit, Patty and I looked at each other and said, what the heck do you do in this kind of a market? Like, we don't know, but we said, let's go find smart people and talk to them about what they're doing. And that's how things will shift. And it's kind of like Chris talked about, innovative ways now to use space. It's been sitting there. We're going to have to do something different. It's not going to be the same. We have to be shifting. So with that being said, you guys are all smart. Where do you see the future going? What are some opportunities for agents in residential and commercial and investment property in the future?
Wow.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Bernie. I was just moaning about the question.
Wait a minute. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you, if you get on the phone, start calling your contacts, you'll figure it out real quick. I don't know where it's gonna go, but I'm not gonna sit here and let it hit me in the face. I'm gonna figure it out. You have to get ahead of it. the best way to stay out of it is to figure out what everybody else is doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you know, I made a lot of money. I did very well in the REO sector, and the biggest question that I was getting was, "Are REOs going to come back? Is this going to be another housing crisis and everything else?" And I can tell you what I don't think is going to happen, and that is to allow us to repeat 2008, 10, 14 again, because no politician wants to see that on their resume ever again. And if you recall, 2014-ish, around there was all this talk about shadow inventory. Where's all that shadow inventory? And it just like disappeared, right? It just dissipated into thin air. And that's not what happened. What happened to all that inventory was the banks and everybody got really, really smart on how to disperse it amongst the hedge funds and let the hedge funds deal with it. And hence why there's so many homes currently for rent and owned that way and not on the market, causing us to have an inventory shortage, because all those homes that the hedge funds purchased back then to get us out of this of the quagmire we were in are now sitting as rentals and are not what would normally be available for everybody to buy and sell, is essentially off the market.
I know.
So we've caused our own housing crisis, inventory crisis, if you will, because of what we've had in the recent past. And I'm talking about 2014. So the REO phase, there'll be some increases, but it's going to be minimal at best, and nowhere will be, no politician wants to see, and I don't think any bank wants to see have to go through the hassle. It's much easier to say, you know what, we're going to give you a forbearance. We're going to take these 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months, and just throw them on the back of the loan, rewrite your loan, and everybody's good. And we'll
Right.
just, give it a do-over is the best way to put it.
I think that commercial landlords need to be nice to the tenants. Now, I'm a landlord rep, I favor landlords, not tenants. However, I think if you're a landlord, you need to be real nice to your tenants, because there's a lawsuit that probably will never help. Nobody's investors are not going to buy a lawsuit. So be nice to your tenants. Don't stand firm.
It's funny because that's how I met Bernie. He was my landlord, and Bernie and I used to battle over stuff because I was a tenant, do it exactly to the line, and he was the landlord to the line, and we developed a bunch of respect for each other. It took us almost killing each other first, but
I was overly nice.
I don't know that I would have called you nice at the time, but that's for another day. Anybody else want a crystal ball at Chris or Keith? Any
So
comments?
what we saw, just to chime in on this, on the commercial end, the commercial investment property end, I got out of college right in the middle of the S&L savings and loan collapse. 1988, I wanted to be an investment broker since I was 13. They drive fancy cars and they have nice suits. And that didn't happen. So the company I went to work for said, you could be a researcher and we'll pay you a salary for that. And you could do leasing, because what happened was we got overbuilt. This is in Scottsdale, Arizona. We got overbuilt. The savings and loan institutions collapsed. Now we have all this vacant space. It was being traded to people that got into it on a different basis. So they could, and they had, obviously some funds available. So leasing was key, was killer. I did leasing for about 10 years straight. And when I moved to Nevada, that was what we did. We did leasing and management. And the same thing's happening. Going into March, my entire team was busy writing letters of intent for new businesses looking for second locations. So I think leasing on the commercial end, for those that want to stay in business, that's going to be something. These landlords are going to need to replace the tenants that just gave up or that are giving up or that maybe get evicted, and those kinds of things, to just be ready. There's also going to be people that are like, this is too big for me. I need to move. So you have different opportunities in the commercial leasing arena like we've never seen before. And that usually follows recession. After 08, 09, we were busy doing leasing for 4 years straight and did very well at it.
What about you, Keith? Anything you want to add to this?
I think you're going to see an awful lot of new types of businesses, a lot of startups coming along. People have lost their jobs and they're going to need income, and they're going to become inventive, just like back in 07, 08, 09. And they're going to start coming up with some different ideas. They're going to need some space. So I think what Chris says is right. You're going to start finding some unique businesses that we haven't maybe seen before, looking for a space that has been abandoned or, the people don't need anymore. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of downsizing, I think. I also think that residential rentals will be very strong. This past month, we've seen an increase of owners putting their properties back on the market again, who had been holding them off to see what was going to happen. And they're putting them back out there, and we're renting them very quickly.
Interesting. It's different. I think it's been a real reflective time for people to kind of figure out, okay, what do I want? I was finding an agent today, and she's been in it 22 years, and she said, you know what, it's time for me to make a change and really turn and shift, because she's had the time to sit back and think about, what do I want? And I think people are doing that with their homes. They've been sitting in them for 90 days, and it's like, no, I want something different. I want, this is what's important to me. Or even I was reading about the luxury vacation home market, and we just had an interaction with the Big Cabin in Bryan Head, and I think people are going back to things like that they want for their families, and probably downsizing at work, right? Things are less space is needed. Yeah.
Definitely in the office market. We've already been notified by many of our office tenants that we manage our office. We actually manage one of Bernie's old buildings on Rainbow and Sahara. And, we have large tenants in there that everybody wanted 10 by 10 offices and, cram them full of people. And people have learned that they can work from home. And so we're already getting requests to sublet some of the portions of all of different things. So it's going to be we're going to be busy. And when we're busy, we generally do well. So I think it's no matter what happens, there's going to be a need for new office, less office, different office on that sector. Retail is a whole different animal. Once people start, feeling comfortable with their money, retail will do well. They'll start shopping and buying things again.
Yeah. And restaurants are open and people are out and doing
Yep.
stuff, and that's coming. Yeah. We're almost at a time. What I think we should do is probably wrap it up with just parting words of wisdom for the agents that are out there. You guys are all smart, and you're all the kind of people that when the market shifts, you shift, right? Like you figure out if you need to do REO. Tom probably never thought he was going to do an REO, and I think he never thought he was going to be a property manager ever. And yet you made that shift and just look at stuff. So what advice do you have for the agents that are out there that are going to see this about investment properties and just moving forward, residential, commercial?
I'll start. Look, I've always been one trying to follow the money. Regular folks are having a hard time buying houses. Wall Street and hedge funds, they don't have a problem buying anything. Hence why, I made the move way back. Now it's only been about 8 months, but started researching where was the money going to be coming from to be able to buy and sell stuff. And that's why I ended up where I'm at in Renters Warehouse. But the thing every other agency to do is they can't be afraid to try something different. Whether it's property management and doing rentals or selling a house, it's all the same. It just has different verbiage attached to it. Instead of a purchase agreement, you have a lease agreement. Same stuff. You promise to pay, right? You're going to buy, you're going to rent. It's the same stuff, different verbiage. Don't be afraid to make that change, and don't be afraid to fail. I've failed more than you all know. I'd hide it well. And, just keep on getting up from your failures and not let it be something that defines you.
Well said. I think it's
Well
everybody
said.
on this
Excellent.
call has failed. We've all been there, and we're all. I don't think it's not. Are you going to fail? It's like you're going to fail, but it's like how quickly can you get back up and get going? One of my friends called me a duck because he said that I always look like I'm so calm and everything's okay. He said, but I know under the water you're like pedaling like
Yeah.
this mad maniac. Because I think that's part of it, is not being scared to do it, and it is a shifting time. It's a change, and we all need to duck and dodge and adapt to figure out new ways to look at things. Bernie, you want to go next?
Yeah. What I would say is opportunities are everywhere. Keep your eyes open. Say yes to new things. Don't say no and shut yourself off. Take on something new and try it. Like Tom says, it's all the same stuff. It's everywhere. Just open your eyes and be receptive to it.
Yeah. And that's it, is being receptive to it. And it's funny because sometimes you always do things a certain way, like you always drive home a certain way. There's nothing wrong with doing it a little bit different. You might find, something else in there that opens up, and there's the opportunity. And if you're not open to it, you're not going to find it, right?
Exactly. We create habits, and the habits tell us we do things a certain way. When times get tough, we fall back on that habit. And if that line of thinking not working, we're out of business. You have to change. You have to be receptive to opportunity. Take advantage of it.
Well said. Well said. What about you, Keith? What parting words of wisdom do you have for people involving investment property and just kind of moving forward?
Basically, don't be afraid to ask questions. We don't know it all. I don't care whether you're a new agent, an old agent, it doesn't matter. We don't know it all. Go and ask the questions. Talk to people. Somebody came to me this morning with a question I didn't even know the answer to. We just went out into the bullpen and started asking other people, and we all came to an answer and, figured it out and helped the person. So, don't be afraid. And I really think in the long run, residential investments are going to be commercial are going to be extremely good. We just have to get through this and hope that the state does not pass any ridiculous laws that will put a squash on our investors.
You notice how carefully he chose his words there?
Yeah.
I'm on the call, he was being extra careful.
I'm being polite, because the more that the government puts restrictions on the ability of the investor to make money, the less that the investors are going to buy, and that's why California has the shortage of problems. Too many regulations, too much tenant friendly. So, there has to be a fine balance of protecting the tenant from a lot of these. We've all been to eviction court. That's the greatest thing in the world, to learn how crazy people do. But they can't restrict the owner so much that it's not profitable to own an investment property.
And it's funny because I've always been a purchaser of single family rentals. That's I understand it. I get it. And so that's typically what I buy. And I kept them all through 07, 8, 9, and 10. And it was interesting because I went into them and they were, $350, and then they went down to $150, and then they're back up. But the tenant still paid the rent through all that time. So it didn't really matter to me because it was still getting paid or paid off. And it makes sense if you can be in there for the long haul, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it does. What about you, Chris? What parting words of wisdom?
So kind of like what I started with is I've been doing something for the last 30 years that I did not go to college for, and that I never thought of. I thought it was, it's just something I never thought of. And yet I found something that was comfortable. My suggestion will be what my mentors always used to tell me. I had two that I just, I looked up to all the time, and anything they said recommended, I would try to do my best. And that is find something that you want to do. And, you know, we all hear find something you love and do it all the time, but seriously, find something that you're comfortable with and find somebody that's doing it and is successful and ask them how they did it, or ask them if they could just sit down with you. Most people, if not everybody, loves talking about themselves, myself included. So they're going to sit with you and tell you what to do. So don't reinvent the wheel. If you want to be in property management, go find a property manager and ask them how they got into it. Most of us didn't pick this field. If you want to be in investment sales, same thing. And the other thing is leaders replace themselves. One thing about our team is half of our team is my age and older. Half my team is way younger than me and way younger than that. And it's just, you know, it's a good mix. Be willing to train and be willing to step aside and let other people work with you and be as even, you know, right up shoulder to shoulder. You know, but if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to do it most of the time. So those are the things, is just find something you're comfortable with, find somebody that's successful at it, and ask them how they got where they're at.
It's been a lesson for me in my life. Every time I want to do something I haven't done, I'm always like looking who's ahead of me and how do I learn from them. I'm always harassing somebody, right, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know that. It's kind of what we do, and I think it's a great way to get there faster. You'll get there in a third of the time because you're following somebody. You don't have to make all the mistakes you would have made had you tried to do it on your own. You're still gonna make mistakes. You're still gonna fall down. You're just not gonna make nearly as many.
And Bernie's one of those guys that I'm talking about. When I heard he was a CPM, I became a CPM. When I heard he was a CCIM, I went for my CCIM. And one of my educators, Susie Jones, tells me that Bernie's the one that told her to get into commercials. So we love our monthly meetings. We hope to get back to Keller Williams for our monthly marketing meetings and so forth. But seriously, this town is still small enough to where everybody knows everybody, and be willing to change. If you look at some of the successful independent brokerages that came out of other brokerages, all of them were in a different field 10 years ago when I got back to Berkshire Hathaway, and they're all either in luxury, they're in custom. Everybody changes, and if you follow the change, and you'll be very successful.
Well, Chris, that was awful nice of you. I think if you why is big enough, the how doesn't matter. It'll take care of itself. You went to college, you wanted to be rich, and this is how you're going to be rich, but you took a different path. So your how doesn't matter. The why is what's important. Why? Because I want to be rich. I don't care how.
Right.
That's right. You figure it out then, don't you? Mm-hmm. You'll always figure it out. So wonderful wealth of information. Thank you guys. And
Thank you.
there's something to be said about sharing and giving back, because everybody on this call is built that way. And it's been interesting as we've done these trending together calls, how many cool, good people there are out there, irregardless of company. And even if they talk funny like Bernie, they're still fun to be around and full of great information. So thank you everybody for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Debbie,
everyone.
for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.